And as the screaming, the volume goes up and more intense, the mother becomes frustrated. She has no power, no control over her space. She loses power. How does she gain power? Well, she goes to the child to shut him up, of course, to, nurse the kid, and the kid passes out. The mother goes back to texting. At a certain point, you see your neighbor's kid riding a bicycle. You don't have a bike. You're jealous. You go to your dad. Your dad has no patience for you. You scream, you shout, throw a temper tantrum. You make your father feel bad. He buys you a bike. You get to be 15. Your neighbor's son drives a car. You want a car. You get to be 25. Your neighbor's son is driving a Tesla. You want a Tesla. You're 30. Your neighbor's son is married to 5 women. You say, yes, I want 10. Time passes, the neighbor's son has like degrees from Yale, and you want one. And that's the thing. We live in an environment where we have power, we lose power. And in having power, your ego gets inflated. You show off what you have. Then you encounter someone who has more power than you do. Then you feel jealous, you feel envious, you're resentful, you lose power. And as you lose power, you want to gain power. You become a political animal. You say, okay, how do I now buy a Tesla? Do I steal the money? Do I sell drugs to make money? Do I go to school? Do I go to Home Depot? And depending on who you are, what you are, and that's what we do. Now, there comes a point, and this is all related to physical life, Samuel, who's yawning. Then you get to be old, a little older, 50, 60, 70, and your body begins to betray you. You begin to forget things, your knees begin to hurt, your back begins to hurt, and now you lose power. You go on medication, you gain some power, but you're very careful where you go, how much work you do. So in the physical realm, we keep having power, losing power, wanting more power. And power is about security. Power is about meaning. Power is about identity. Power is about purpose. There comes a certain point in your life where you're 45, 50. You've been there, you've done that. You're married, you have a house, you have a car, you have degrees, you have a whole host of things. And then one day you look yourself in the mirror and you say, I have all these things, but they're not fun for me. They're no longer meaningful. They no longer have value. If you want, you can consider that to be like a Socrates sort of a thing. That now becomes your intellectual quest. You want to know who you are, self-observation. You've loved a car, but now you realize you love yourself within the context of time before you die. In South America, there is this thing called the 3 stages of death. You have good death, bad death, and a tragic death. And I suppose we can talk about bad death now. A good death is something hopefully my father will have. He's 90, he's relatively healthy, moves around, goes to the car wash. And I pray that he dies in his sleep. You know, he's lived enough, he's 90. A bad death would be, he's lived a really, really good life. He has a stroke. And he lingers on for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years with machines, various pills. And my mom has to take care of him. I have to take care of him, my sister, and all of us have lives. At a certain point, despite how much you may love someone, you pray for their death, not only for their liberation, but for yours as well. So at a certain point, you look at your life and you say, everything I've done is wrong. How, why you come to this conclusion, who the hell knows? But your spiritual journey begins. I have no idea what your question was. I guess it doesn't really matter. So let's talk about observation, love and hate, and all that. Yeah.
Oh, that was
No, go ahead.
that was me raising my hand.
You sure?
Like this is like scratch my hair.
Oh. Any with questions, or should I just go on?
Oh. Well, it came to me. What's the difference between a bad death and a tragic death?
A bad death is my father being hooked up to machines for the next 15 years. A tragic death. What?
Car accident.
That's again?
Car accident.
Oh, car accident?
Accidental
Yeah.
Accidental death.
Yeah.
That's like tragic.
A tragic death is, imagine I have a son who happens to be 20, your age. What do 20-year-olds have? Before you answer. When I was 20, I was walking the streets and I saw this young woman. She was so beautiful. Not in soul, not in mind. She was just beautiful in body. And that's all that matters when you're 20. So I followed her home without her knowing that I'm following her. You know, I'm from the Middle East, so we're very cunning. And once I realized where she lived, I knocked on the door the following day. Her mother opens the door and says, "Yes?" I said, "I am Amir." "Yeah? Who are you?" "This is my mom, Munir." "Okay, what do you guys want?" "I want to marry your daughter." "Oh, yeah?" "Yeah. Come in, please." So we go in, and my father's there, my mom's there, I'm of course there, and her parents are there, and she's sitting right there. And I keep winking at her, and she keeps winking back. You know. And the father says, "So, Amir, you want to marry my daughter?" She says, "The only child I got." "Yeah, I want to marry her." "Well, what do you have?" "I'm rich," I say to him. "Well, I know. Well, what do you have?" "Oh, I am so rich." "Do you have a car?" "No." "But you're rich," you say. "Yes." "But did you finish school?" "No." "Do you have money?" "No." "Savings?" "No." "Do you have a house?" "No." "What the hell do you have?" I've asked you all these questions, and you've only expressed poverty. How are you rich? "I'm rich in dreams. I'm young. I'm going to go to the moon, and I'm going to take your daughter with me." Parents are very practical, pragmatic little animals. They don't care really if you want to be, an astronaut. They want to know if you have money in your pocket, if your physical life is healthy. So imagine I have a son who is rich, and we're driving, having a nice conversation. Someone in the car, let's call him an ass, driving 120 miles an hour, 580. Gets close to our car, loses control. Our car flips. Everyone survives except my son. And you have to sit back and ask, Amir Sabzavari is 60. He has lived his life. If anybody should have died in this crash, it should have been me, not my son who's just starting to live his life. That is a tragic death. People should be allowed to live their life to relative completion before life or God takes them.
So can a tragic death only happen to the young?
I guess so. For them, yeah. And if you happen to be in India, if you happen to be in the Middle East, if you happen to be in certain parts of Africa, Mexico, and even here, young people die on a daily basis for no good reasons. And their deaths are always going to be tragic, always. Because what young people have is really dreams that old people no longer do. Matteo.
If an older person did have dreams like that,
They don't.
inherently,
There was a guy, Houston Smith. I think he graduated from Yale or Harvard or Stanford, the some forsaken place. He wrote this best-selling religion book, World Religions. He was 90, and when he did his last interview, he said that, I think I have one more book in me. So yes, old people can have dreams, but it's not as fertile as the imagination of a 20-year-old.
Like an old person had some dream, or maybe it was like a dream that they had in their youth and they finally were pursuing it, and they died while pursuing it. Is it that attraction factor?
I wanted to become a professional tennis player. And I remember on the court, this is about maybe 40 years ago, I played this match with this kid and I lost 6-2, 6-2, 6-2. And I played 8 hours a day, maybe sometimes 10 hours a day for about 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And of the 8 years, 10 hours a day, I only remember that one match. I didn't win. I lost horribly. But I think I played my best tennis game. And so here's a trick. For those of you in this class, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it nevertheless. For those of you in this class who at times find life to be relatively meaningless, and you sometimes wonder how you're going to die, and I'll make it a little raunchy, if you don't mind. Not raunchy in a bad way, in a good way. Here you are, a person who doesn't have very many desires, doesn't have very many loves or hates, is somewhat indifferent. So remember, the opposite of love is not hate, is actually being indifferent. But that's for a different day. And let's just say you're a man, let's call you, I don't know, Joe. And on the way to the coffee shop, you run into, and let's just say you're heterosexual, you run into a woman, let's call her Nay, last name Omi. Okay? Now, there is something very attractive about her, so you have a desire. I wonder who she is. I wonder if she walks the lake around this time every single day. I wonder how old she is. I wonder if she has a boyfriend or a husband, if she has kids. As you begin to nourish the seeds of imagination, you become attracted and push forward. You find yourself in love with this woman after 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks. And every time you want to become intimate with her, she says, oh, heavens no, I'm a Catholic. Let's get married first. You say, fine. You guys get married, and now you walk into the bedroom. And the both of you are now doing what rabbits do. And you're a man, and you're about very, very, very close to a climax. In fact, you are at the very top of Mount Everest. It's too much for your little pathetic heart. Right there and there, you die. You say, ah! And then you die. She doesn't know it's because you had an orgasm or you're just dead. In your case, you're dead. But just think for a moment how you died. And you're only 20. You loved this woman. You loved her. You didn't like her, you loved her. And there is no gift above that. But love by itself is not enough, because ultimately there is so much passion in love. If you love coffee, there needs to come a point where you put your lip or this cup to your lip and you tilt it and you give your tongue, your taste buds, your imagination. Something that was abstract, you bring it down. You give it real, physical, tactile experience. You and I read Socrates only in books. And you imagine it, like the way you imagine Jesus Christ. Plato saw him, heard him, watched him die. Here you are, you love a human being, and like all of us in this class who imagine having a Tesla and eventually buying one, and then you sit in it, you say, it feels so beautiful.
I want to play.
Imagination and a physical component, they come together. So what you have is the Father, who's God way up there. You have the Spirit, which is passion, and you have the body. You have the Trinity complete. Okay? It's like this is Jack, this is Jill. Jill likes Jack's body. All of a sudden, Jill begins to like Jack's emotions. Okay? And then you have sitting, talking, and you realize this guy has a really, really nice intellect as well. Now you have the Father, i.e. intellect. What you have is the Trinity. And so when you die, while being intimate with this woman, you die a fulfilled, complete human being. You die in the cradle of perfection. There is no tragedy. So for those of you in this class who want to die well, find someone you like. No reason to read the Bible, major in philosophy, live to be 100. We can live well in the first 20 years, find someone relatively decent, create love, be passionate, and while you're going up and down, pray to God that He will come down and just rid you of your flesh. That's a good death. Yes? Yeah.
Have you heard the saying, graveyard, the graveyard is the richest place? Have you heard?
رو به گورستان دمی خاموش نشین آن خموشان سخنگو را ببین. But you have to be in a special mindset. When I was younger, I lived in Roseville, and I used to take most of the dates I would have, and these were like customers. There was this beautiful cemetery on Sunrise and Greenback. This cemetery was maybe 10 acres. And there was a gated, tiny private cemetery in the whole cemetery. And so I would ask my dates to climb over the fence. And they had the statues of the four saints, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I would ask them which tombstone, gravestone they want to sit on and have food. They would find it weird, but man, the amount of fun we used to have there. I think Paul, Peter, John, Joe, they would all be so jealous watching from above. Yeah, they can tell you the richest stories, the dead.
Well, I was reading something that said it's the richest place because it has a lot of, lost dreams, lost hopes.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a movie with Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer called Frankie and Johnny, I think, if I'm not mistaken. He's a guy who just left prison. He's found work. Good luck. He's found work at a coffee shop. And the following day, the waitress dies. And he goes to the funeral. And Michelle Pfeiffer, the waitress, asks him, "You hardly knew this waitress. Why did you come to the funeral?" And Al Pacino, or Johnny, says to her that, like everyone else, every morning she would bring out her dreams, and at night she would put them back because they weren't fulfilled. So,
I actually find it, I read it.
yeah,
It says the graveyard is the richest place on earth because it is here that you will find all the hopes and dreams that were never fulfilled, the books that were never written, the songs that were never sung, the inventions that were never shared, the cures that were never discovered, and all because someone was too afraid to
to live, yeah. Sometimes when I sit in my office and I'm bored and I don't want to write and I want to think, I YouTube people who live off grid. And so, it's like this kid who starts his life with going to Home Depot and buying a couple of 2x4s, roping them together, and living on some river and some sea or ocean. And then as time goes on, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now you have an entire planet. It's a big space he has now. There's a garden there. He has a solar system over there. He's got a TV there. And I ask myself, well, how does one ever get to a place where they're able to and you have to be a dreamer and you have to be young, I guess, to some extent, where you turn your back to all the things the society has given you. And society is a great place because it gives you everything. I mean, if you were to live off-grid, you have to create your own food. You have to make your own food. You have to make your own clothes. You have to make friends with the sea and the thunder and the storm. And it's too much work. Here you just go to Safeway. You go to Subway. You're bored, you come to class, and I'll entertain you for an hour and a half. There was a book that was written, later on turned into a movie, Into the Wild, I think. He's got a scholarship from Stanford or Yale, but he's rebellious by nature. And it, again, makes me think of James Baldwin. The social structure is you gotta be a heterosexual human being. Everybody is married, has kids, be attracted to a woman, get married, have children. But there is something about him that says, you're attracted to the same sex. And now you have to figure out, well, do you want to hear the voice that lives inside you? And none of us really get those voices very clear. So you have to go through many layers, to figure out if the voice is accurate, authentic, creative, or is it planted inside you by some untrusted source. So in as much as I think what you just read is beautiful and profound, I also think it can be very, very misleading and dangerous. Let me give you a poem by this man named Baba Tahir. He's from Hamadan. Let me give you a very, very, very quick history of who this man is. At the age of 11, he went to a mosque, like a church in the Muslim world, and the guy who was giving a sermon said that he said there is a way that you can reach God very quickly. And as a 12-year-old, he raises his hand and says, "How?" And sarcastically, this old man looks at him and says, "Well, it's very easy. It has to be winter time where the land is blanketed or covered by snow. Then you have to go sit in the middle of the snow, but you have to be absolutely, completely naked. And then you have to keep saying, La ilaha illallah, or there is no God but God. You have to keep saying it until your body becomes like this generator of heat. And if you do that the right way, the snow around you will melt and God will come to you. And of course, you're a kid, you believe everything that people say, like Santa Claus and all that. And so that's what he does. And lo and behold, God appears before an 11-year-old kid. And God says, what do you want from me? I want enlightenment. Fine, you have it. And from that point on, he's called Baba Tahir Orion. Baba means father, Tahir means pure, Orion means naked. That you don't have the clothing of society. You don't have the desires and ambitions of society. Something about you is very, very, very clean. You've been washed with bleach. Okay? And so this is his poem. Trying to remember it. ز دست دیده و دل هر دو فریاد، هر آنچه دیده بیند دل کند یاد. بسازم خنجری نیشش ز فولاد، زنم بر دیده تا دل گردد آزاد. ز دست دیده و دل هر دو فریاد. Sometimes I want to scream because I have eyes and my eyes look out there and it finds things attractive and then my heart desires them. And then when I can't get what I desire, they leave inside me as a memory. And then the memories haunt me. Like I wanted Joe because I found him attractive. I spent time with Joe. Joe left me. I've been traumatized for the past 50 years. بسازم خنجری نیشش ز فولاد. I want to create or make a dagger made of steel. And I want to pluck out my eyes. Because when I'm blind, I can't see. If I can't see, I won't desire. If I don't desire, there is nothing inside me or outside me that I desire to worship. There's no attraction. That is where my freedom or liberation live. In being blind. And that's what the cemetery is all about. That if at the end of your life, your home, your real home, is 3 by 6, 6 feet under. If the only thing you carry into your grave is your corpse and nothing else, why do anything? Why pursue anything? You know, and for someone who is impressionable, who's young, who can receive these ideas and they absorb it like a sponge, they can kind of take the stuff and say, you know what? I'm dropping out of school. I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to live in a tent. It may be that you may be discovered by Beyonce or Angela Davis or Miley Cyrus because you're so profound. But the chances are 99.9% you'll be swallowed up by life and you'll be crushed and your life will be awful. I think the only benefit of walking through any cemetery, the only benefit that reading the Dialogues of Plato, because Dialogues of Plato is very much like that. It kind of asks you, why are you doing this? Why do you want that? Who the hell are you? What's wrong with you? And what in essence it's doing is like, Plato is like death coming to you saying, listen, everything you want, all your questions, all your desires, your entire life is stupid. And that's what the cemetery is. It makes your entire life like dust, meaningless. You know, and it's a great place for self-observation. You kind of sit back and say, okay, since I'm going to die, what should I do that will cause the least amount of regret?
When I'm at a cemetery, I always start thinking about, wait, let me get my stuff together.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Reflecting your life when you're at a cemetery.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on like discipline and like having your children be your legacy? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
If you read your legacy, there are a couple of things before we. Yeah. Before we.
So like selfish and wanting yourself to be. I mean, not to say that, I think that's
No, I understand.
I just agree.
You know, Abraham in the Old Testament looks at God and says, I want to be immortal. And God says no. Abraham says, please, I don't want to die. No, but I'll do something for you, Abraham. God tells Abraham, I'll make you a father. And you can live eternally in your children. That's how you will attain immortality. In other words, you and I are destined to die. But who's going to carry your tradition? Who's going to carry the rituals? Your children. But then the question is, how do you want to raise your kids? How much power do you want to exercise over your kids? And the idea that parents impose their own dreams on their kids, they have every right to do so. Look, I want my kids to be better than I am. I mean, most of us, if you have an immigrant parent or you have had parents who've had a very difficult life, they are filled with dreams. As a father, I don't want my child to work at Home Depot. I want him to go to school. Not just Laney, I want him to go to Stanford. I don't want him to marry a drunk. These are my dreams that I want my kids to have. Don't have a life like me. And so when the question is, do parents have the right to burden their kids with their dreams, unfulfilled life? The answer is yes. I don't want my kids to serve behind bars. I want them to serve a life that's beneficial to them. Now, there are a couple of things. First, you need to ask about parenthood. What exactly is it? What does it mean? How are kids born? You know, if two parents sit down and say, or two would-be parents, imagine I were to sit with my wife and ask, so do you think it's time for us to have children? The first thing, if she has any intelligence to her, says, Amir, you know, we live in a studio. We don't have any money. You're going to school. I'm going to school. Do we have time for this kid? And with some reflection, you realize you're going to do something profoundly criminal. You're going to bring a life, and you have zero resources. Now imagine you do have resources. We had some guests over this past weekend. The wife is a lawyer. She goes to work at 5 in the morning and she comes home at 8. Her husband stays home. Now, human beings are born to be selfish. As a mother, of course, you're also condemned by your own biology because at a certain point, your body says to you, Shannon, you are my kids. Your eggs, you know they're expiring. Give me kids. And now you got two things. You have screams coming from your body, biology, psychology. You also have your personal social status ambitions. You say, okay, I'm going to put this on pause, have children. And you're a great mother for like 2 days. Then you say, man, I want to be in the courtroom. I want to be a lawyer. And then you hire some people, or your husband, you know, is a full-on stay-home dad. And so what you're dealing with is parents have no choice but to become like Jesus Christ. They're like sacrificial lambs. I don't care what you think about your parents. For some time in your life, your dad and your mom put their entire life and selfishness on pause to make money to buy you diapers, to get milk, to buy this, to buy that. At a certain point, having children, it's an exhausting task, man. Every parent, like Jesus Christ, lives in the Garden of Gethsemane, at times says, let this cup pass by me. I don't want to be a parent for at least a week. Can that happen, please? You know, and what you have in these 4 Gospels is basically the human life. That you could be passionate, you could be caring. At a certain point, it just gets too much. And you say, I just need to go on vacation for a week or 2. You know, I want to rest. It's good to see all of you. Today's Tuesday. I'll see you Thursday. Have a nice day. Take care, and I'll see you in a couple of days. Thank you for your questions. They're very good.
Living in class, but I said forget it.
Hello.
We're gonna go to school.